the Radio Forest Podcast.
Well, all right.
Billy Gibbons, Reverend, how are you?
No complaining. If I felt any better, I'd be twins, I think.
Hell yeah. A little mutual friend talked to somebody this morning you might know, Mr. John Bolin.
Indeed, indeed. What a talent. That little outfit, Bolin Guitars, right there in Boise, they do it and do it right.
How did you first get in touch with Bolin to have your guitars made? He said he doesn't even know how many guitars he's made for you, and every time I see you anywhere, usually it's a John Bolin guitar, so you guys have to go back a couple of decades.
Indeed. It was during the Eliminator Tour way back in 1983, which brought Mr. Bolin and I together, and we've been fortunate enough to have deepened our friendship and working relationship, as you point out, through the decades. That is a good question. How many guitars? Every guitar we've played since that initial meeting has emanated from the likes of Bolin Guitars right there in Boise.
Do you play a lot of the Bolin guitars on hardware coming out June 4th?
That is correct. And what's really interesting, John and I were talking at length. We both have a great admiration for Jimi Hendrix. And one of the tracks that has always been not only fascinating, but it's a source of humor. He, as you may know, he utters under his breath, "You shall never hear surf music again." And the first track that began to unfold during the recording of this new album, Hardware, was the sound of the 60s. Bolin's guitar has a great tonal variation. One sound, which is easily accessible, is none other than the sound of a surf guitar. How's that for strangeness?
And I heard you might have a guitar Jimi Hendrix gave you. Is that true?
That is correct. From way back in the day, yeah.
Do you still get that out and play it? And how did he give you a guitar?
We were backstage, and I want to say it was somewhere between Texas and California. We had landed a spot with the Jimi Hendrix Experience. That tour hit the States, coming straight from England, way back in the day, and this is rather interesting. On any given night, you could walk out the backstage door, and there was a large truck, and when the rear gate opened up, there was no less than 24 Fender Strats ready for Jimmy to take his pick. Yeah, there was plenty to go around, and gosh, now you're bringing back some fond recollections of those days.
I know earlier in your career, too, you also played with Jim Morrison and the Doors. Now, on the new album, the song Desert High, you do mention the Lizard King. Is that a reference to Jim Morrison?
It certainly is. We wrapped up Keith Richards, Jim Morrison, and quite surprisingly, a lot of folks have found interest in the fact that we mentioned Graham Parsons, who I actually met many moons back. Quite an unexpected encounter. I had become a fan of what Graham Parsons' music had come to mean, and he was actually making a road show that allowed me to tiptoe in. I came down early to see if it was actually going to unfold, and lo and behold, parked in front of the venue was an ancient touring bus, something you might have seen from one of the traveling groups from the 50s even, and I got to talking on the curbside about this bus. I guess 30 or 45 minutes had transpired, speaking not about guitars, not about songwriting, but about this bus. Finally, this stranger turned to me and said, "Oh, by the way," he said, "I'm going to bow out for a second. I'm going to go see what the stage sounds like." And I said, "Do you drive this thing?" He goes, "No, I ride in it." He said, "Oh, excuse me." He said, "I didn't give you my name. I'm Graham Parsons."
Oh, wow.
Yep. We were trying to put our thoughts together on what the desert had come to mean, and it's a bit of a challenge when you try and encapsulate all that mysterious energy. You can see photographs of the desert, you can read about the desert, but there's something that unfolds when you're actually tiptoeing inside the expanse of sand, rocks, and cactus. There's a magic energy that can't easily be described, but it was the closing number from the new record Hardware. But Desert High was our attempt to take a stab at what it's like to be out there.
Now you've got Matt Sorum, Velvet Revolver, and Guns N' Roses on Hardware, and you played with them on your last solo release too. I had no idea he could be such a smooth, jazzy kind of rhythmic player. What do you hear different from him than Frank Beard? Like, how does he fit into the band and kind of give you a different sound? What do you pick up from Matt Sorum?
Frank has a rather elegant, kind of a light touch, and then you get the ferociousness of what Matt Sorum brings to the party. I have the luxury of being on the vortex of the balancing act. It gives me the opportunity to see both sides of the coin. Matt's got it all together. He goes from mild to wild. It leaves my guitar slinging buddy, Austin Hanks, and I, we're left in the corner scratching our heads going, man, where do we take this next? This guy's got it all. Matt Sorum, he covers all the bases. It's pretty wild.
Where's the last place Billy Gibbons has gone that you haven't been recognized?
Well, I hope this you'll find somewhat entertaining. We do have one day a year when we can tiptoe just about on any corner, and that being Halloween night. We'll make the corner and say, hey, dude, you're going to win the contest. You look like that ZZ Top guy.
I know that now you kind of play lighter strings than when you started. A real famous blues musician kind of told you going lighter was better for blues.
Oh, yeah. Very early on, I wound up sharing a dressing room with B.B. King. He said, hey, man, can I play your guitar? And I said, sure, man. And he gave it a few strums, and he smiled and handed it back, and he asked me a question. He said, man, why are you working so hard? And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, those strings are so heavy. You need to lighten up. I said, well, isn't it heavy strings that give you that big, bold sound? He said, not necessarily. He said, here. And he handed me Lucille. I realized here was B.B. King with some of the biggest, baddest sounds ever playing super light gauge strings. And I turned the corner at that very moment. I realized it's all in the hands.
Wow, that's such a cool story. And you get to jam with Lucille for a little bit. Is it just you and him backstage, or are you on stage, or is it before or after a show?
Yeah, the show got put back about 15 minutes. BB and I were having a blast trading licks here and there. It was it was quite an exchange.
I heard there might be some ZZ Top shows in the future. How does ZZ Top reconvene? Where does the green light come from?
Man, very good question. I was speaking with Austin Hanks and Matt Sorum, wrapping up the sessions on Hardware. The three of us decided it would be wise to join the many folks that are waiting for the curtain to rise, which everybody that I know has been waiting to kick their heels up and get back to making some loud noise. And hopefully sooner than later, we'll see you around the corner, as they say.
How about upcoming songs? You got anything in the can for another solo release, maybe a different project, or getting back together with ZZ Top? Do you have any riffs? Do you have any songs you want to cover? Anything in the can for the future?
Sure enough, we had a few leftovers, which we've been saving and savoring. And the good news is I tossed a few over to Frank and Dusty from our outpost in California. Through the air, they went back to Texas, where a new ZZ project. I guess I get the high hand of luck. I get to leave one studio and tiptoe into the next. So there's all sorts of things ready to percolate.
Any idea on the solo tour for Hardware or release date for a new ZZ Top?
Well, keep one ear to the ground. I think it's going to be sooner than later. It's a bit scattered, but things are opening up. Of course, I've got strings attached to both the West Coast all the way back to the Lone Star State. Everybody's smiling, thinking along the lines of, hey, let's get back to it. A good thing, I may say.
New album, solo release from Billy F. Gibbons, Hardware, June 4th. It's got him on guitar, his buddy Austin Hanks also playing guitar, and then Matt Sorum, Velvet Revolver, Guns N' Roses on the skins. He's got a bunch of videos out. The songs have been released from My Lucky Car, Desert High, West Coast Junkie. We mentioned the Rock and Roll Gearhead. Another version just came out. And the Whisker Bomb, Hot Sauce, Billy F. Gibbons, the Reverend Billy G.
Always good hearing your voice, and you're speaking to the many that embrace the community of Boise, Idaho. Is a very, very special place. A big shout out to my long-standing buddy, John Bolin from Bolin Guitars around the community. There's lots of fun to be had, so let's get back to it, man. Good to hold the exchange. We're looking forward.
Oh, he did mention he might be working on something. Do you have any insight to what might be in the works for Mr. John Bolin? Is it something for you?
Oh, yeah. Well, whatever rolls off the production line at Bolin Guitars, you know it's going to be special. Silky smooth and certainly ready to plug it in and crank it up. It's always all the good. I'll leave it to John to crank it out, man. It's a good stuff.
Reverend Billy G., thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon.
Bueno, bueno. Have mercy, as they say.